So there's this Prussian prince who was almost, and I cannot stress this enough, almost the first leader of the United States. Not George Washington, not Thomas Jefferson, a German royal who'd never set foot in America, didn't speak English, and spent most of his time at his palace hosting theatrical performances with his collection of exceptionally handsome young officers. The year was 1786. Alexander Hamilton was behind it. Baron von Steuben, the Prussian general who basically won the Revolutionary War for us, was pushing for it. And the candidate, Prince Hinrich of Prussia, younger brother of Frederick the Great, distinguished military commander who never lost a battle, shrewd diplomat, and a man so openly interested in other men that even his brother Frederick, himself rather fond of male company, occasionally sent him mocking letters about it. Tonight, you are standing in a smoky Philadelphia tavern in early 1786. The Revolutionary War has been over for 3 years, but the new nation is a mess. The Articles of Confederation aren't working. There's no real federal government. States are basically independent countries arguing with each other. The economy is collapsing. Some very important men in very nice wigs are starting to wonder if this whole democracy thing was a terrible mistake. And someone, history isn't quite sure who, has just suggested something absolutely wild. What if we just got ourselves a king? A nice one, obviously. Liberal-minded, cultured European, someone with actual experience running things, someone like that Prussian prince who helped us during the war. You know, the brother of Frederick the Great. This suggestion should have died in that tavern. It didn't. For several months in 1786, there was genuine, serious discussion at the highest levels of American politics about offering the crown, or presidency, or whatever we'd call it, to a foreign prince. A prince whose personal life was so well documented across European courts that everyone knew exactly what they'd be getting. The evidence for this remarkable moment in history exists in letters, diplomatic correspondence, and the memoirs of the men involved. It shows us something extraordinary about the chaotic early years of American independence, and something even more remarkable about the Prussian prince who might have said yes. As we settle in tonight, we're going to discover not just the what-if of American history, but the fascinating life of Prince Heinrich von Prussia, a man who commanded armies, never lost a battle, lived openly as a gay man in 18th century Europe, and came closer to being King of America than most people realize. But before we begin this journey together, drop a comment below and let us know which historical story you'd like us to cover next. Also, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps more than you know. Now, dim the lights and prepare to discover why this story will change how you think about both American history and what was possible for gay men in the 18th century. Let's start with what we actually know happened in 1786, because this isn't speculation or myth. This is documented historical fact that somehow never made it into your high school textbooks. In May of 1786, someone in American leadership circles, either Nathaniel Gorham, then President of the Continental Congress, or more likely Baron Friedrich Wilhelm von Steuben, the Prussian general who'd saved George Washington's army at Valley Forge, floated an idea to Alexander Hamilton. The idea was this: Prince Heinrich of Prussia should become the leader of the United States. Some sources say president, others say king. The terminology was flexible because, frankly, nobody was quite sure what America needed yet. This wasn't a joke. This wasn't a thought experiment. This was a serious proposal backed by serious people who'd just fought a war and were watching their new nation fall apart before their eyes. Think about the context for a moment. It's 1786. The Constitutional Convention won't happen until 1787. The presidency as we know it doesn't exist yet. George Washington has firmly, repeatedly said he doesn't want to lead anything. He just wants to go home to Mount Vernon and be left alone. The Articles of Confederation have created a federal government so weak it can't collect taxes, can't raise an army, can't enforce its own laws. States are printing their own money. Trade is a disaster. In Massachusetts, farmers are literally rising up in armed rebellion. Shays' Rebellion is happening right now. Some of the founders, the same men we celebrate for creating a democratic republic, are genuinely wondering if they got it wrong. Maybe Americans need a monarch after all. Not a tyrant like George III, obviously, but an enlightened constitutional monarch. Someone with experience, someone respected, someone European. Enter Prince Heinrich von Prussia, age 60, living in comfortable semi-retirement at his palace in Rheinsberg, about 50 miles north of Berlin. Why Heinrich? Well, several reasons, and they're all fascinating. First, the Prussian connection. Americans already loved Prussia because Prussia had helped them win the war. Baron von Steuben, who was gay, never married, and had fled Europe just ahead of scandal, had arrived at Valley Forge in 1778 and transformed Washington's ragtag collection of freezing, starving, barely trained farmers into an actual army. Without von Steuben's Prussian military discipline, we probably lose the revolution. Every educated American in 1786 knew this. Second, Heinrich's reputation. He wasn't just Frederick the Great's little brother. He was a genuinely brilliant military commander in his own right. During the 7 Years' War, the massive European conflict from 1756 to 1763, Heinrich had commanded Prussian armies and never lost a single battle. Not one. His older brother Frederick, despite being called the Great, lost several. Heinrich's cautious, strategic approach meant he won consistently. When Frederick's aggressive tactics led to disaster at the Battle of Kunersdorf, it was Heinrich who reorganized the shattered Prussian forces and saved the kingdom. Frederick himself had written to Heinrich after the final battle of the war, "You alone have the honor of breaking down Austrian obstinacy." That's quite the endorsement from one of Europe's most celebrated monarchs. Third, Heinrich's diplomatic skills. After the war, Heinrich had successfully negotiated the first partition of Poland, conducting shrewd diplomacy in Stockholm and St. Petersburg. He'd twice been proposed as King of Poland himself. He'd tried to become ruler of a kingdom in Wallachia. The man clearly had ambition and international recognition. Fourth, and this is where it gets interesting, Heinrich was known as cultured and liberal-minded. He transformed his palace at Rheinsberg into a centre for arts and theatre. He hosted performances, supported artists, collected sculptures and paintings. He spoke French fluently, the language of international diplomacy. He was everything a European Enlightenment prince should be. And fifth, everyone knew he was gay. Not suspected, not rumoured, known, openly across every European court. Heinrich didn't hide it. Unlike his brother Frederick, who was more discreet about his male lovers and kept up certain appearances, Heinrich lived quite openly with his male favourites at Rheinsberg. He'd been in a childless marriage of convenience since 1752, Princess Wilhelmina of Hesse-Kassel, who'd adapted to her role as official wife while Heinrich pursued relationships with a rotating cast of young officers, actors and aristocrats. His longest relationship was with Major Christian Ludwig von Kaffengst, who'd basically bankrupted Heinrich through extravagant spending at Schloss Merseburg, an estate Heinrich had given him. Heinrich had to borrow 130,000 thalers from France to cover Kaffengst's debts. That's not exactly subtle. Frederick the Great had even written mocking letters to Heinrich about his little darlings, including one delicious piece of sarcasm about a young royal page. "Your little darling is doing very well. He yearns for love and composes elegies in your honour full of hot kisses, which he intends to give you on your return. I advise you to conserve your strength so that you have enough to assert your love." So, when Alexander Hamilton and Baron von Steuben discussed offering Heinrich the American leadership, they knew exactly who they were considering. This wasn't hidden information. This was the whole package, and they didn't care. Or rather, and here's the fascinating part, they apparently thought Heinrich's sexuality was either irrelevant or perhaps even advantageous. After all, a leader with no legitimate children meant no hereditary dynasty. A leader who wouldn't father bastards with American women meant fewer complications. A leader whose personal life was already openly known meant no scandals or surprises. The proposal was made. Letters were sent through diplomatic channels. Heinrich was formally approached, and before he could respond, before he could say yes or no, before he could laugh or seriously consider it, before he could pack his bags or politely decline, the offer was withdrawn. Why? Because cooler heads prevailed. Because the Constitutional Convention was scheduled for 1787, and maybe they should wait to see how that went. because George Washington finally, reluctantly, agreed he'd serve if needed. Because the very idea of offering America's leadership to a foreign prince, no matter how qualified, was exactly the kind of thing they'd just fought a war to escape. The moment passed. Heinrich never formally declined because he never got the chance to formally respond. George Washington became president. The Constitution was ratified. The United States became a republic, not a monarchy. And Prince Heinrich of Prussia went back to hosting theatrical performances at Rheinsberg with his handsome young officers. But here's what keeps me up at night. What if the timing had been different? What if Heinrich had received the offer 6 months earlier and enthusiastically accepted? What if he'd sailed to America in 1786, walked into the Continental Congress and said in heavily accented French, "I am honored to serve"? Would American history teachers now explain to children that our first leader was an openly gay Prussian prince? Would we celebrate Heinrich Day instead of President's Day? Would there be a massive palace in Washington instead of the White House? That alternate timeline almost happened. It got closer than you think. So let's talk about who Prince Heinrich actually was, because this man's life is fascinating whether he almost became King of America or not. Friedrich Heinrich Ludwig von Hohenzollern was born on January 18, 1726, in Berlin. He was the 13th child of King Frederick William I of Prussia and Princess Sophia Dorothea of Hanover. 13th. In 18th century royal families, being child number 13 meant you were basically invisible. You'd never inherit the throne. You'd never be particularly important. Your job was to not embarrass the family and maybe provide a spare heir or two if everyone else died of smallpox. Heinrich's father, Frederick William I, was what we might charitably call a piece of work. The man was obsessed, and I mean obsessed, with soldiers, military discipline, and hypermasculinity. He built up the Prussian army into the 4th largest in Europe, despite Prussia being only 10th in population. He created the famous Potsdam Giants, a regiment of extraordinarily tall soldiers he collected like trading cards, sometimes kidnapping tall men from other countries just to add them to his collection. Frederick William I hated art, hated philosophy, hated French culture, hated anything soft or effeminate. He ran his court like a military barracks. His idea of a good time was sitting in a room full of officers, smoking tobacco and discussing military tactics. This was called the Tobacco College, and it was exactly as appealing as it sounds. Now, imagine being Heinrich's older brother Frederick, artistic, musical, philosophical, fluent in French, more interested in poetry than pistols. Their father despised Frederick, called him effeminate, called him a sodomite, which was ironic because Frederick probably was gay and their father was just guessing based on he likes flutes and books. When young Frederick tried to run away to England with his close friend, probably lover, Hans Hermann von Katter in 1730, Frederick William I had Katter executed and forced Frederick to watch. The king wanted to execute Frederick too, and only the intervention of the Holy Roman Emperor saved the crown prince's life. After that, Frederick learned to hide his true self. He married Elizabeth Christine of Brunswick-Bevan in 1733, a marriage he never consummated, producing no children, and learned to maintain appearances. Heinrich watched all of this happen. He was 4 years old when Katter was executed, 14 years younger than Frederick. Old enough to understand that their father was a monster, young enough that Frederick William I didn't bother persecuting him the way he'd persecuted Frederick. Interestingly, the historical record suggests Frederick William I never suspected Heinrich of being gay, even though Heinrich absolutely was. Maybe he'd exhausted his homophobic energy on Frederick. Maybe 13th children just didn't rate that level of attention. Maybe Heinrich was better at playing the game. Heinrich was forced into the army at age 12, as all Prussian princes were. Initially, the other officers mocked him as Colonel of Marionettes, a pretty boy prince who'd gotten his rank through birth, not merit. Heinrich proved them wrong through sheer competence and dedication to military science. He studied tactics, strategy, logistics. He read everything about warfare he could get his hands on. By the time Frederick became king in 1740, Heinrich had earned his rank. And then came the complicated part, being Frederick the Great's younger brother. On paper, they should have been close. They were remarkably similar, both small in stature, about 5 feet 4 inches, both handsome in that sharp-featured Prussian way, both fond of French literature and arts, both exceptional military commanders, both gay. But Frederick couldn't see it, or wouldn't see it. Frederick had spent his entire youth being brutalized by their father for being weak. Now, as king, Frederick overcompensated by being militaristic, aggressive, constantly proving his toughness. He'd internalized their father's toxic masculinity, even while maintaining his love of art and male company. And he took it out on Heinrich. Frederick bullied Heinrich, openly mocked him, excluded him from state affairs, criticized his tactics even when Heinrich won battles, called him the boy despite Heinrich being a grown man and accomplished general. When Heinrich published his memoirs under the pseudonym Marshal Gessler in 1753, Frederick was dismissive. Most painfully, Frederick actively sabotaged Heinrich's ambitions. Heinrich twice tried to become King of Poland, a real kingdom, a chance to step out of his brother's shadow. Frederick blocked him both times. When Catherine the Great of Russia planned to create a new kingdom in Wallachia and offered it to Heinrich, Frederick intervened and killed the plan. Why? Probably because Heinrich was everything Frederick wanted to be, but couldn't quite manage. Confident in himself, comfortable with his sexuality, beloved by his troops, successful in battle without needing to prove anything. Heinrich won battles through caution and strategy. Frederick won battles through aggressive, risky tactics that sometimes worked brilliantly and sometimes led to catastrophic defeats. At the Battle of Kunersdorf in 1759, Heinrich had urged Frederick to stop attacking after initial success. The king, who'd already sent a message of victory to Berlin, pressed the attack. The day ended with a virtually destroyed Prussian army and complete victory for the Russian-Austrian forces. Heinrich had to reorganize the routed Prussian forces and save the kingdom from defenselessness. Frederick never thanked him, not properly. But here's the thing, and this is important for understanding Heinrich's character. Heinrich never stopped being loyal. Despite the bullying, despite the sabotage, despite being constantly second best in Frederick's eyes, Heinrich served faithfully as one of Frederick's top generals throughout Frederick's entire reign. During the 7 Years' War, 1756 to 1763, Heinrich commanded Prussian armies and never lost a single battle. When Frederick suffered defeats at Hochkirch in 1758 and Kunersdorf in 1759, it was Heinrich who saved the army with brilliant rearguard actions both times. Frederick named Heinrich regent-in-waiting and commander-in-chief in case Frederick died in battle. That's loyalty. That's also the sad story of someone desperate for their siblings' approval and never quite getting it. The Swedish ambassador to Prussia, Carl Gustav Tessin, observed the brothers and noted something telling. Voltaire saw Frederick as the embodiment of the philosopher king, the enlightened monarch the Age of Reason was supposed to produce. But Tessin thought Heinrich was actually superior in virtue. Heinrich was, by deed, the man Voltaire had hoped the Age of Reason would produce. Meanwhile, what was Heinrich's personal life like during these war years? Unlike Frederick, who maintained official discretion about his male lovers, even while filling his palaces with homoerotic art and all-male company, Heinrich was what we'd call living his truth. In 1752, at age 26, Heinrich had been pressured into marriage with Princess Wilhelmina of Hesse-Kassel. The wedding took place at Charlottenburg Palace in June. By all accounts, Wilhelmina was lovely, charming, beautiful, intelligent, and willing to play her part. The couple received Rheinsberg Palace as a wedding gift from Frederick, who'd lived there himself before becoming king. The marriage produced no children. The couple quickly became estranged, though they maintained cordial public relations. Wilhelmina knew the score. This was a marriage of convenience, standard for high-born gay men of the era. She'd be princess, have a palace, enjoy royal status. He'd have social respectability and freedom to pursue his actual interests. Those interests included a rotating series of attractive young men. There was the actor Blainville, Pierre-Jean Fromentin de Blainville, a French performer who became an intimate companion. There was the young Count La Roche-Aymon, a 17-year-old French émigré who'd fled to Prussia and caught Heinrich's eye. There was Friedrich Adolf von Kalkreuth, a general who served as Heinrich's adjutant and main favourite from 1758 until they fell out in 1766. And then there was Major Christian Ludwig von Kaffengst. Oh, Kaffengst. Every gay man has had a Kaffengst in his life. The beautiful disaster you can't quit even though everyone, including you, knows it's a terrible idea. Kaffengst joined Heinrich's inner circle as an officer and became Heinrich's longest-lasting favourite. Heinrich was absolutely besotted, gave him an entire estate, Schloss Merseburg, not far from Rheinsberg. Let Kaffengst live there in luxury, supported his increasingly extravagant lifestyle. Kaffengst, for his part, exploited the prince's interest in him to lead a dissipated, wasteful life. That's the polite historical way of saying Kaffengst spent Heinrich's money like he was trying to personally bankrupt Prussia. He ran up such enormous debts that Heinrich eventually had to borrow 130,000 thalers from France just to settle them. 130,000 thalers! In modern terms, that's, well, it's selling state secrets to pay your boyfriend's credit cards levels of money. And Heinrich did it anyway because he was in love, or infatuated, or whatever 18th century Prussian princes called it, when they couldn't stop themselves from financing a beautiful young man's champagne habit. Frederick knew about all of this. Everyone knew. It wasn't secret. And Frederick, being Frederick, sent Heinrich mocking letters about it. In one letter from 1746, Frederick wrote to Heinrich about the handsome Marwitz, a young royal page Heinrich was involved with. "Your little darling is doing very well, and if he stays well behaved, you will see him again soon. At the moment, he yearns for love and composes elegies in your honour full of hot kisses, which he intends to give you on your return. I advise you to conserve your strength so that you have enough to assert your love." This is Frederick being jealous, making fun of Heinrich for being open about something Frederick couldn't be open about himself. Frederick had his own male favourites, his valet Fredersdorf, various young officers and pages. But Frederick maintained official discretion. Heinrich didn't bother. By the end of the 7 Years' War in 1763, Heinrich's military reputation was unassailable. He'd proven himself the equal of any commander in Europe. His diplomatic skills were recognised internationally. His palace at Rheinsberg had become a cultural centre where arts, music and theatre flourished. And everyone, from Berlin to Paris to Vienna to London, knew that the brilliant Prussian prince who'd never lost a battle lived openly with his male lovers. It didn't end his career. It didn't diminish his reputation. It just was. That's the context for understanding why, 23 years later in 1786, some Americans thought that Prussian prince would make an excellent leader. They knew, they all knew, and they considered him anyway. Picture Rheinsberg Palace in, say, 1770. The 7 Years' War has been over for 7 years. Heinrich is 44 years old, in the prime of his life, financially recovering from the Kaffengst disaster and settling into his role as Prussia's second most important person and probably its best general. The palace itself is beautiful, a Baroque gem sitting beside Lake Grinrichsee, about 50 miles north of Berlin. It's not Versailles, but it's properly impressive. Frederick had lived here as Crown Prince and extended it in the Frederiциan Rococo style that would later culminate in Sanssouci. When Frederick gifted it to Heinrich in 1744, Heinrich made it his own. While Frederick's Sanssouci was strictly male only and focused on intellectual pursuits and military planning, Heinrich's Rheinsberg was more theatrical, more openly artistic, more flamboyant, if we're being honest. In 1774, Heinrich added a palace theatre, not a small room where you might perform for friends, an actual theatre attached to the Cavalier House. He brought in travelling drama groups, commissioned operas, performed in them himself occasionally. Imagine being invited to spend an evening at Rheinsberg. You arrive in the late afternoon, your carriage crunching along the gravel drive. The palace rises before you, elegant and imposing. Guards in Prussian blue snap to attention, and you notice they're all uncommonly attractive young men, which is either coincidence or, more likely, Heinrich's peculiar hiring criteria. Inside, the palace is decorated with taste and significant expense. Classical sculptures line the hallways, Greek heroes in various states of undress, which was perfectly respectable 18th century art appreciation, and definitely not Heinrich making a statement. Paintings by fashionable artists hang in gilded frames. French furniture fills the rooms because French style was the height of continental sophistication. You're shown to a guest room to refresh yourself before dinner. The linens are excellent. The view overlooks the lake. You can hear faintly someone practicing a musical instrument somewhere in the palace, probably a flute or harpsichord. Dinner is at 7 in the great dining hall. You enter to find perhaps 20 other guests, military officers mostly, with a few artists, a visiting diplomat, and one French actor Heinrich seems particularly attentive toward. The officers are young, handsome, and clearly chosen for aesthetics as much as military competence. Several wear more medals than their age would suggest they've earned, which you politely don't mention. Heinrich enters last, as is proper for the host. He's smaller than you expected, maybe 5'4", but carries himself with the confidence of someone who's commanded armies. His Prussian military uniform is impeccably tailored. His hair is powdered in the French style. When he smiles in greeting, it's genuine warmth, not the cold formality you'd expected from a royal prince. The dinner itself is French cuisine, naturally. Multiple courses, fine wines from the Rhineland. Conversation flows in French, the language of educated Europeans, though Heinrich occasionally lapses into German when making a joke or telling a military story. The topics are Enlightenment favourites: philosophy, literature, the latest scientific discoveries. Someone mentions Voltaire's recent essay. Someone else discusses the new play in Paris. A young officer attempts to contribute a thought about military tactics, and Heinrich gently corrects him with the patience of a teacher, not the severity of a commander. You notice Heinrich touching the young French actor's hand occasionally during conversation. Nothing scandalous, just brief, affectionate contacts that wouldn't warrant comment between close friends, but carry additional meaning here. Everyone at the table notices. No one reacts. This is just how things are at Rheinsberg. After dinner, the party retires to the salon for cards and music. Heinrich plays the harpsichord competently, though he's quick to say he's nowhere near his brother Frederick's level. Someone requests a song. An officer with a surprisingly good tenor voice obliges. Around 9 o'clock, Heinrich announces that tonight's entertainment will be a performance in the Palace Theatre, a comedy by Molière, performed by the travelling company currently in residence. The guests file into the theatre, which holds perhaps 100 people, and tonight is filled with palace residents, local nobility, and lucky townspeople. The play is performed in French, naturally. It's witty, sophisticated, occasionally risque in that way French comedies are. Heinrich laughs genuinely throughout, clearly delighted. The young French actor sitting beside him whispers commentary that makes Heinrich smile. After the performance, there's wine and conversation in the theatre lobby. Heinrich mingles with everyone, from the highest-ranking military officer to the youngest actor in the company. He's remembered everyone's name. He asks thoughtful questions. He makes people feel seen. By midnight, most guests have retired. You're walking back to your room when you pass Heinrich and the young French actor in a corridor, standing close, speaking quietly in French. They see you, nod politely, and continue their conversation. You continue to your room. The next morning, breakfast is available whenever guests wake. You find Heinrich already up at 6, dealing with correspondence in his private office. Even at his palace retreat, he maintains connections with courts across Europe. Letters arrive daily from St. Petersburg, Stockholm, Paris, Vienna. Heinrich reads everything, responds to everything. He's stayed relevant in European politics through sheer correspondence volume and diplomatic skill. Mid-morning, you witness Heinrich reviewing troops in the palace courtyard. About 200 soldiers are garrisoned at Rheinsberg, and Heinrich personally oversees their training. The transformation is remarkable. The affable, cultured host becomes a precise, demanding military commander. He notices every detail, corrects posture, demonstrates proper sword technique. The troops clearly respect him, possibly fear him a little, definitely admire him. One young soldier, handsome, perhaps 19, makes a mistake in formation. Heinrich corrects him firmly, but not harshly. After the review, you notice Heinrich speaking with this soldier privately. then laughing at something the young man says. It's reported that Heinrich often chooses officers for his regiment based on their looks rather than solely their military competence, and watching him interact with his troops, you can believe it. This is Heinrich's life at Rheinsberg, cultured in the evening, military in the morning, openly affectionate with his male favourites while maintaining his duties as a Prussian prince, reading French philosophy while also planning military manoeuvres, hosting theatrical performances while also advising his brother the king on matters of state. It's a remarkably balanced existence, and one that probably wouldn't have been possible anywhere else in Europe. Rheinsberg is Heinrich's sanctuary, and being Frederick the Great's brother gives him protection that even wealthy commoners wouldn't enjoy. Compare Heinrich's situation to, say, contemporary gay men in France or England. In France, being caught in sodomy could mean public execution, or, if you were lucky and well-connected, imprisonment. In England, the penalty for buggery was death by hanging, a law that remained on the books until 1861. But Heinrich collected handsome officers like some people collect porcelain, gave his boyfriend an entire estate, wrote love letters that his brother mocked him for, and faced exactly 0 legal consequences. Class privilege is real, folks. Royal class privilege is reality warping. That said, Heinrich wasn't immune to heartbreak or exploitation. The Kampfengst situation had hurt him, financially and emotionally. By the 1770s, Kampfengst was no longer Heinrich's favourite, but the financial damage lingered. Heinrich had to be more careful with money, more careful with his heart. But he didn't stop being himself. That's the remarkable thing. A lesser person, after being financially devastated by a lover, might have retreated into bitterness or celibacy. Heinrich just kept being Heinrich, kept hosting theatrical performances, kept surrounding himself with attractive young men, kept living authentically in an era when authenticity could get you killed if you weren't a Prussian prince with an unassailable military reputation. When Baron von Steuben visited Rheinsberg, which he did periodically, as the two men were friends and possibly more, he must have seen it as a sort of paradise. Here was proof that a gay man could live openly, respectably, successfully in 18th century Europe. All you needed was royal blood, military genius, a famous brother, and the ability to win every battle you fought. Simple, really. Von Steuben, for his part, had none of those advantages except military competence. He'd had to flee Europe ahead of scandal in 1777, just one step ahead of accusations about his relationships with young men. He'd arrived in America, offered his services to George Washington, and basically saved the Continental Army through training and discipline. So, when von Steuben suggested in 1786 that Heinrich might make an excellent leader for America, he wasn't just making an abstract political proposal. He was suggesting his friend, his fellow gay Prussian military man, as the solution to America's governmental crisis. And for a few fascinating months, people took it seriously. Section 4. The Revelation. The American Proposition. Approximately 1,000 words. Now here's where it gets interesting, because we're going to talk about what actually happened in 1786 and why this utterly bonkers proposal almost became reality. The year 1786 was a disaster for the United States. And I mean disaster in the maybe this whole independence thing was a mistake sense. The Articles of Confederation, America's first attempt at federal government, were failing spectacularly. The central government couldn't collect taxes, couldn't regulate trade between states, couldn't raise an army, couldn't enforce its own laws. Each state functioned as an independent country. Some printed their own money. Trade disputes between states were handled like international negotiations. It was chaos. The economy was collapsing. Britain was flooding American markets with cheap goods, destroying local manufacturing. American merchants couldn't compete. Farmers couldn't sell their crops. In western Massachusetts, poor farmers were being thrown in debtor's prison, which sparked Shays' Rebellion, an armed uprising of farmers against the state government. The rebellion terrified America's leadership. George Washington wrote that the country was fast verging to anarchy and confusion. Thomas Jefferson, safe in Paris as ambassador to France, tried to be optimistic, but even he was worried. Alexander Hamilton, never one for understatement, declared the situation a crisis. Into this mess came a small group of men asking a dangerous question: what if democracy doesn't work? The idea of American democracy was still incredibly radical in 1786. Most of the world was ruled by monarchs. The Enlightenment philosophers Americans loved, Voltaire, Montesquieu, Rousseau, had proposed various forms of government, but actual democracies were rare and often unstable. Some founders were starting to think maybe they'd been too idealistic. Maybe people couldn't govern themselves. Maybe you needed a strong executive. Maybe you needed a king. Not a tyrant, obviously. Not George III. But an enlightened monarch. A constitutional monarch with limited powers. Someone experienced in governance. Someone respected internationally. Someone who could provide stability while America figured itself out. The British had this system, sort of. They had a king, but Parliament held most of the power. It seemed to work reasonably well, as long as the king wasn't insane. George III's mental health was deteriorating, but that wasn't widely known yet. So, if America needed a king, where would they get one? Obviously not from Britain, not from France. They'd just fought a war against one monarchy and didn't want to invite another. Spain? Absolutely not. Some random Italian prince? No connections to America. Prussia, though. Prussia had helped America. Prussia was respected militarily. Prussia represented Enlightenment values. Frederick the Great corresponded with Voltaire, promoted religious tolerance, modernized his kingdom. And Prussia had a spare prince, Prince Hinrich of Prussia, younger brother of Frederick the Great, 60 years old in 1786, no children, distinguished military career, diplomatic experience, liberal-minded, cultured, spoke French, and, this is crucial, Heinrich had already tried twice to become king of other places and been blocked by his brother. Maybe he'd be interested in America. The proposal apparently came together through several channels. First, there was Nathaniel Gorham, president of the Continental Congress in 1786. Some sources claim Gorham initiated the idea, possibly in coordination with others concerned about American governmental collapse. Second, there was Baron von Steuben, the Prussian general who'd saved Washington's army at Valley Forge and was now living in America as a hero of the Revolution. Von Steuben knew Heinrich personally. He'd visited Rheinsberg. He knew Heinrich's capabilities and his ambitions. Third, there was Alexander Hamilton, who in 1786 was a young lawyer and politician already pushing for stronger federal government. Hamilton wasn't particularly democratic in his instincts. He believed in governance by educated elites. A capable Prussian prince might have appealed to him as exactly the kind of enlightened executive America needed. The proposal was floated in private conversations first, then apparently in letters sent through diplomatic channels. The details are murky. This wasn't something anyone wanted documented if it failed, but multiple historical sources confirm that Heinrich was seriously approached about becoming America's leader. What exactly was offered? The sources disagree. Some say King of the United States, others say President, though that title didn't formally exist yet. Some suggest a unique title, something like Prince Protector or First Consul. The terminology was flexible because America hadn't figured out what its executive would be called yet. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room: Heinrich's sexuality. Did the Americans know? Yes, absolutely yes. Baron von Steuben knew he was gay himself and friends with Heinrich. Alexander Hamilton knew. He was educated, well-read, connected to European diplomatic circles. Nathaniel Gorham knew. Anyone involved in international politics knew. Did they care? Apparently, not much. This is the fascinating part. In an era when sodomy laws could get commoners executed, when being caught in a same-sex relationship could destroy careers and families, when the closet was mandatory for survival, a group of American founders seriously considered offering leadership to an openly gay Prussian prince. Why? Several possible reasons. First, royal privilege created different standards. What would be scandalous for a commoner was merely eccentric for a prince. European courts all knew about Heinrich's male favourites and considered it his private business. Second, Heinrich's military and diplomatic achievements outweighed personal concerns. The man had never lost a battle. He'd successfully negotiated the partition of Poland. He was respected across Europe. If you need someone competent, does their personal life matter? Third, Heinrich's lack of children was actually a feature, not a bug. The Americans didn't want a dynasty. They wanted temporary leadership while they figured out permanent governance. A 60-year-old gay prince with no heirs and no intention of producing any was perfect. He'd lead, then die. Then America could elect its own leaders without fighting a hereditary monarchy. Fourth, and this is speculative but interesting, maybe some of the founders were more personally tolerant than history remembers. Hamilton's intense relationship with John Laurens has been analysed as possibly romantic. Von Steuben was definitely gay. Maybe this particular group of men were more open-minded than their era suggested. Or fifth, maybe they were just desperate. When your country is collapsing, you take help where you can find it. The offer was made. Letters were sent. Heinrich was formally approached through diplomatic channels. And then the offer was withdrawn. Not because Heinrich declined, because the Americans changed their minds before he could respond. Several things happened in late 1786 that made the monarchist proposal less urgent. First, plans for the Constitutional Convention were solidifying. Maybe America could fix this through a new constitution rather than importing a king. Second, George Washington signaled he would serve if needed. Having the universally respected hero of the Revolution as a potential leader made foreign princes unnecessary. Third, Shays' rebellion was suppressed. The immediate crisis passed. Fourth, cooler heads pointed out that offering America's leadership to a foreign prince was exactly the kind of thing they'd just fought a war to escape. It was ideologically embarrassing. The proposal was quietly dropped. The letters were recalled or destroyed. The whole episode was swept under the historical rug. Heinrich never formally declined because he never got the chance to formally respond. By the time word reached Rheinsberg, the Americans had already moved on. But just imagine if the timing had been different. If Heinrich had received the offer in early 1786, immediately sent back an enthusiastic yes, and boarded a ship to America before anyone could reconsider. Picture Heinrich arriving in Philadelphia in, say, August 1786. Small, dignified, impeccably dressed, speaking French because his English is limited. He'd probably bring some of his officers, including at least one conspicuously handsome young aide-de-camp who serves as his secretary. The Americans greet him with formal honours. He's installed in a proper residence. Newspapers announce the arrival of His Royal Highness Prince Heinrich of Prussia, invited to serve as leader of the United States. And then America's first constitutional crisis begins. What exactly is a gay Prussian prince doing leading our republic? It wouldn't have lasted. It couldn't have lasted. The ideological contradiction was too great. But for a few months or maybe even years, the leader of the United States might have been an openly gay foreign prince who never lost a battle. Alternative history is fascinating, isn't it? Section 5, The Bigger Picture, Gay Royalty in the 18th Century, approximately 1,000 words. Let's zoom out and talk about what Prince Heinrich's life tells us about being gay in 18th century Europe. Because this is way more complicated and interesting than everyone was homophobic and life was terrible. The historical reality is this. Sexuality in the 1700s was understood very differently than it is today. The modern categories of gay, straight, and bisexual didn't exist. The concept of sexual orientation as an identity, as something you are rather than something you do, wouldn't emerge until the late 1800s. Instead, 18th century Europeans thought about sex acts, not sexual identities. Sodomy was a sin according to the Church. In many places it was also a crime, punishable by death or imprisonment. But sodomy was understood as a behaviour anyone might engage in, like adultery or fornication, not as an indication of being a particular type of person. This created a strange situation where homosexual activity was simultaneously forbidden and relatively common, especially among upper classes. For royal and aristocratic men in particular, there were several escape hatches. First, marriage provided social cover. If you married a woman and produced at least one heir, your duty to family and state was fulfilled. What you did in your private time was, officially, nobody's business. Second, class privilege provided protection. Laws against sodomy were enforced primarily against poor people, particularly those who engaged in sex work or couldn't afford discretion. Wealthy men with private residences could do essentially whatever they wanted behind closed doors. Third, cultural context mattered enormously. Courts that embraced Enlightenment values and classical Greek/Roman aesthetics created space for homoeroticism under the guise of sophisticated cultural appreciation. When your palace is filled with sculptures of naked Greek athletes and paintings of Zeus seducing Ganymede, having a male favourite or two seems like simple classical scholarship. Fourth, military culture created opportunities. Armies were all-male environments where close bonds between soldiers were expected and celebrated. The line between brotherhood and romance was deliberately blurry, allowing relationships to develop under cover of military camaraderie. Fifth, and this is crucial, everyone was doing it. So many European aristocrats and royals had same-sex relationships that it created a kind of mutual protection through shared scandal. If you exposed someone else's secret, they could expose yours. Better to maintain a genteel fiction of not noticing. Prince Hinrich benefited from all these factors. He married for appearances, check. He was royal, providing maximum class protection, check. His court embraced Enlightenment aesthetics, check. He was a military commander surrounded by soldiers, check. And he existed within a European royal network where many people had similar secrets, check. But Heinrich went further than most by being open about his relationships in ways that were unusual even for his privileged position. Compare him to his brother Frederick the Great. Frederick was almost certainly gay. He had male favourites throughout his life, starting with his youthful affair with Peter Karl Christoph von Keith, then Hans Hermann von Katter, whose execution Frederick was forced to witness, then his longtime valet Michael Gabriel Fredersdorf, and various others. Frederick never had sexual relations with his wife. His palace at Sanssouci was decorated with homoerotic art, paintings, sculptures, frescoes of Ganymede, and other classical male beauties. Contemporary accounts universally described Frederick as attracted to men, but Frederick maintained plausible deniability. His relationships were presented as close friendships. His art collection was classical scholarship. His all-male court was simply a preference for intellectual male company. When Voltaire published memoirs describing Frederick's homosexuality in explicit detail, Frederick publicly dismissed them as lies while privately having the publication suppressed wherever possible. Frederick understood that as King of Prussia, he couldn't be openly gay. It would provide ammunition to enemies, undermine his authority, contradict his carefully cultivated image as a tough military leader who'd overcome his father's accusations of effeminacy. Heinrich, as younger brother and not king, had more freedom. He didn't need to maintain the same level of official dignity. He could afford to be more open because less rested on his reputation. But even so, Heinrich's openness was remarkable. When he installed Major von Kaffengst at Schloss Messeburg and openly supported him financially for years, everyone knew what that meant. When he chose officers for their looks rather than military competence, it was commented upon. When he wrote letters expressing affection for male favourites, those letters circulated. And yet Heinrich's military and diplomatic career flourished. He commanded armies, he negotiated treaties, he was respected across Europe, he was considered as a potential king of Poland multiple times and as potential leader of the United States once. His sexuality was known, commented upon, occasionally mocked by Frederick, but never used to destroy his career or reputation. Why? Because he was competent, because he was royal, because he maintained certain formalities. He was married, he didn't engage in public scandals, he kept his relationships within his household or private estates, because everyone who mattered was doing something similar. And because in the 18th century people could hold contradictory ideas simultaneously. Sodomy is sinful, but that Prussian prince's relationship with his aide-de-camp is none of our business. It's a peculiar sort of tolerance, not acceptance, certainly not equality, but a pragmatic looking the other way that allowed gay aristocratic men to live relatively authentic lives as long as they maintained appearances and remained useful to the state. Compare Heinrich's situation to gay commoners in the same era. In England, the molly houses, underground clubs where working-class gay men met, were periodically raided by police. Men were arrested, publicly humiliated, sometimes executed. In France, men caught in sodomy could face burning at the stake, though in practice sentences were often reduced to imprisonment or exile. In Prussia itself, despite Frederick the Great's personal tolerance, sodomy remained technically illegal. The difference was that the law was rarely enforced against wealthy, discreet individuals, but could be used against anyone who made themselves a target through public scandal or lack of powerful protectors. The lesson isn't that 18th century Europe was secretly tolerant. It wasn't. Gay people faced enormous legal, social, and religious persecution. The lesson is that class, power, competence, and discretion could create remarkable exceptions to general rules. Baron von Steuben, for example, had competence, military genius, but not class, minor nobility, not royalty, or discretion. Rumors about young men led to scandal. He had to flee Europe. In America, he carefully maintained the closet for the rest of his life. The fact that Alexander Hamilton and others considered Prince Heinrich for American leadership, despite knowing his sexuality, tells us something important about the limits and contradictions of 18th century attitudes. They weren't accepting of homosexuality in any modern sense, but they were willing to make exceptions for useful, competent, powerful men who maintained appropriate formalities. Heinrich was useful, military genius, diplomatic experience, competent, never lost a battle, powerful, Prussian prince, and formal, married, discreet, no public scandals. Therefore, his sexuality could be known and simultaneously ignored when it came to positions of leadership. Would this have worked in America? We'll never know. But the fact that it was seriously considered shows that even in 1786, sexuality wasn't necessarily a disqualifying factor for leadership if the person brought enough other value. That's not the story we usually tell about the 18th century, but it's true. Section 6. The Legacy after the American Dream. So, the American offer was withdrawn. Heinrich never became King of the United States. George Washington took the job instead, and the rest, as they say, is the history you actually learned in school. What happened to Prince Hinrich after 1786? He lived another 16 years, comfortable, relatively happy, increasingly influential in his old age, and still very much himself. When Frederick the Great died in August 1786, just months after the American proposal was withdrawn, Heinrich hoped to finally step out of his brother's shadow. He was 60 years old, the most experienced military commander in Prussia, skilled diplomat, and Frederick's designated advisor to the new king. Frederick's nephew, Frederick William II, became King of Prussia. He was 32 years old, inexperienced, and needed guidance. Heinrich expected to become the power behind the throne, the wise uncle advising the young king. It didn't quite work out that way. Frederick William II was not like Frederick the Great, where Frederick had been disciplined, intellectual, austere, and militaristic. Frederick William II was artistic, pleasure-loving, mystically religious, and easily influenced by favourites and mistresses. He was more interested in his mistresses and his passion for the occult than in Prussian military policy. Heinrich found himself less influential than he'd hoped. The young king listened to other advisors, especially those who told him what he wanted to hear. Heinrich's military caution and fiscal conservatism weren't exciting enough for a king who wanted to expand Prussia's power and enjoy his reign. Still, Heinrich remained important. He was a living connection to Frederick the Great's legacy. He was respected internationally. Foreign diplomats sought his opinions. When Prussia needed military advice, Frederick William II turned to his uncle. Heinrich spent most of his time at Rheinsberg, maintaining his cultural court, hosting theatrical performances, corresponding with intellectuals across Europe, and managing his estate. The Kampfangst disaster had taught him financial caution, but he still surrounded himself with attractive young officers and maintained intimate friendships with various men. In 1797, Frederick William II died and was succeeded by his son, Frederick William III, who was only 27. Once again, Heinrich was positioned as elder statesman and advisor to an inexperienced young king. This time it worked better. Frederick William III was more serious-minded than his father, more respectful of Prussian military tradition, more willing to listen to Heinrich's advice. During the last 5 years of Heinrich's life, he was genuinely influential in shaping Prussian policy. Not that Prussia was in great shape. Napoleon was rising in France, reshaping Europe through military conquest. The old order was collapsing. Prussia would soon face its greatest crisis since the 7 Years' War, but Heinrich wouldn't live to see it. On August 3rd, 1802, Prince Heinrich died at Rheinsberg Palace. He was 76 years old. He'd outlived his brother by 16 years, served 3 Prussian kings, commanded armies across Europe, never lost a battle, negotiated the partition of Poland, been considered as king of 2 nations, nearly become leader of the United States, and lived openly as a gay man in an era when that could get commoners killed. He was buried on the grounds of Rheinsberg Palace, the home he'd loved for 58 years. His wife, Princess Wilhelmina, outlived him by 6 years. They'd been married for 50 years in a union that produced no children, but apparently maintained cordial respect. Whatever their arrangement was, it worked well enough that Wilhelmina stayed at Rheinsberg after Heinrich's death. So what's Heinrich's legacy? In Germany, he's remembered primarily as Frederick the Great's younger brother, the brilliant general who lived in Frederick's shadow. There are biographies of Heinrich, but they're massively outnumbered by biographies of Frederick. Rheinsberg Palace is now a museum and cultural centre, part of the Prussian Palaces and Gardens Foundation, and you can visit Heinrich's theatre and grounds. In gay history, Heinrich is a fascinating figure, one of the few openly gay men in positions of power during the 18th century whose sexuality was known, documented, and relatively accepted. He's proof that gay men have always existed, in every era, and that under the right circumstances of class and competence, they could live relatively authentic lives, even before modern LGBTQ+ rights. In American history, Heinrich is almost completely forgotten. The proposal to make him America's leader is a footnote in scholarly works about the Articles of Confederation period, mentioned occasionally in discussions of how chaotic early American governance was. Most Americans have never heard of him, but that near miss is fascinating to think about. Imagine if Heinrich had become America's leader in 1786, even temporarily, even for a few months before Americans changed their minds. American history would include this chapter, the brief period when we imported a gay Prussian prince to fix our governmental crisis because we weren't sure democracy would work. That would change how Americans think about their founding era. The founders wouldn't be quite so mythically perfect. The early republic wouldn't be quite so triumphantly inevitable. And American kids would grow up learning that once, briefly, their nation's leaders seriously considered that maybe what the United States needed was a foreign prince who lived openly with his male favorites. That's a more complicated, messier, more human version of American history. And it's true. The fact that it nearly happened tells us several important things. First, the American founding wasn't inevitable. The Constitution wasn't inevitable. The presidency wasn't inevitable. Democracy wasn't inevitable. For several years, American leaders genuinely weren't sure what would work. They tried everything, including considering a constitutional monarchy. Second, sexuality was understood differently in the 18th century. The proposal to offer Heinrich leadership despite his known sexuality wasn't tolerance in any modern sense. It was pragmatic exception-making for a useful, competent, powerful man. But it shows that even then, sexuality wasn't always an automatic disqualifier for leadership. Third, competence mattered. Heinrich was considered because he was brilliant at military command and diplomatic negotiation. His personal life was secondary to his professional achievements. That's a useful reminder that people are complicated, and you can acknowledge someone's abilities while also acknowledging their personal lives. Fourth, history is full of weird, almost happened moments that completely change how we understand the past. If you only know the story of George Washington becoming president, you think American leadership was obvious and inevitable. If you know about the Heinrich proposal, you understand that America's early years were chaotic, desperate, and full of wild ideas that nearly became reality. The Swedish ambassador to Prussia, Carl Gustaf Tessin, said that while Voltaire saw Frederick as the philosopher king, Heinrich was arguably, by deed, the man Voltaire had hoped the Age of Reason would produce. That's Heinrich's real legacy. He was competent, cultured, kind to artists and soldiers alike, strategically brilliant, diplomatically skilled, and authentic in his personal life, despite enormous pressure to hide. He commanded armies and won battles while also hosting theatrical performances and writing love letters. He was, in other words, fully human. And for a brief, strange moment in 1786, a group of Americans thought maybe that's exactly what their new nation needed. They were probably wrong. Heinrich would have been a terrible fit for American democracy, and the whole idea was born from panic rather than wisdom. But the fact that they considered it at all is wonderful and weird and very, very human. And that's worth remembering. As our journey through Prince Heinrich's extraordinary life concludes tonight, we're reminded that the past is far from dusty and dull. It's a vibrant, often surprising, and always intriguing tapestry woven with human ingenuity, resilience, and the occasional near miss that would have changed everything. Prince Heinrich never became King of America. He never set foot in the United States. He lived out his years at Rheinsberg Palace, hosting theatrical performances, commanding respect across Europe, and living authentically in an era when that took remarkable courage, or remarkable privilege, or both. But for a few months in 1786, the impossible was possible. A gay Prussian prince was seriously considered as America's leader. Letters were sent, offers were made, history held its breath. And then the moment passed, and George Washington became president, and the United States became the democratic republic we know today. But Heinrich's story remains, a reminder that history is full of people like us, living complicated lives, pursuing happiness in difficult circumstances, and occasionally almost changing the world in ways nobody expected. Until our next archaeological adventure together, this is the Sleeping Archaeologist, encouraging you to remain curious about the incredible tales still waiting to be discovered beneath our feet. Do not forget that you can download our storybook on this fascinating subject, Evidence Vault, and take the quiz to see how much of this you took in, all for free. Check the link in the description, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. But for now, stay tuned, as we have a bonus story coming right up, read, especially for you, by our guest narrator.
Thank you for having me here. What a wonderful channel. Our next story is the 500-year-old murder mystery. What really happened to the princes in the tower? Hope you like it. When you think of King Richard III, what's the first image that pops into your head? Go on, be honest. It's probably a shadowy, hunched-over figure, practically twirling a villainous mustache, while plotting the demise of some innocent children. He's the monster from the history books, the big bad wolf of the Wars of the Roses, a pantomime villain so perfectly evil that Shakespeare basically just had to write down the legend and collect his fee. For centuries, this has been the accepted narrative. Richard, the wicked uncle, saw two sweet little princes standing between him and the throne, and did what any self-respecting sociopath with a crown fetish would do. He had them snuffed out. It's a clean story. It's a simple story. It has a hero, the Tudors who came later, conveniently, a victim, the poor princes, and a villain so cartoonishly evil he makes Disney characters look morally complex. We've been told this story for over 500 years, passed down from Tudor propagandists to famous playwrights to well-meaning but overworked history teachers. It's a historical bedtime story designed to make sure we know exactly who to root for. There's just one tiny, inconvenient little problem with it. The entire premise rests on a foundation of hearsay, political spin, and the accounts of men who had every reason to make Richard III look like the devil incarnate. The accepted story was a masterpiece of political marketing, and it was almost certainly wrong. Tonight, you are not a bystander watching a play. You are at the very heart of this mystery. The year is 1483. You are 12 years old, and you are Edward V, King of England. You are the elder of the two famous princes. the boy who was born to rule, the golden child of the House of York. And you are about to walk into the most famous cold case in British history, not as a victim in a textbook, but as a living, breathing child watching his entire world dissolve around him. Your story isn't about a fairy tale monster. It's about something far more chilling: the slow, creeping, bureaucratic horror of ambition, and the terrifying realization that the walls protecting you are, in fact, the bars of your cage. The proof of your final, silent fate, or at least, what everyone assumes is the proof wouldn't come for another 2 centuries. In 1674, while conducting renovations at the Tower of London, a group of workmen demolishing a staircase near the White Tower Chapel found something that stopped them cold. Buried about 10 feet under the stone steps was a small wooden chest. Inside, nestled together, were the skeletons of 2 young children. They were immediately assumed to be you and your younger brother. These weren't just bones. They were the receipts, the physical evidence in a case that had been built entirely on rumor. This discovery was so powerful, so symbolically complete, that the reigning king, Charles II, had the remains interred with royal honors in Westminster Abbey. It was the final act, the closing of the book on your story. But what that discovery really did was force us to ask a harder question. Not just asterisk what asterisk happened to you, but asterisk how asterisk boy born to be king could simply vanish from the face of the earth. This discovery, made in the Tower of London in 1674, reveals something extraordinary about the brutal fragility of power in the 15th century. As we settle in tonight, we're going to uncover not just what archaeologists found, but what it tells us about the surprisingly relatable lives of people who lived in a time of treacherous political change. Now dim the lights and prepare to discover why this story will change how you think about the most famous unsolved mystery in English history. Before the Whispers, before the Tower, before your uncle became a name synonymous with treachery, your life is, for a prince, remarkably normal. You live at Ludlow Castle, on the border of Wales. It's a fortress, yes, a hulking statement of Yorkist power, carved from red stone, but it's also your home. You aren't surrounded by the vipers and flatterers of the London court. Your father, King Edward IV, was a genius in many ways, and one of his smartest moves was deciding that the heir to the throne shouldn't be raised in the political sewer of Westminster. Instead, he sent you here to preside over the Council of Wales and the Marshes. It sounds grand, and it is, but in practice, it means you are being raised as a ruler, not a pampered ornament. Your days have a rhythm, a comforting structure governed by tutors and duty. You wake when the sky is still a bruised purple over the Welsh hills. The air is cold, carrying the smell of wood smoke and damp earth. Your chambers are luxurious, of course. Tapestries hang on the walls, not just for decoration, but to keep the biting drafts from seeping through the stone. They depict heroic hunting scenes and biblical allegories, and sometimes, when you're supposed to be studying Latin verbs, you trace the woven threads with your finger, imagining yourself as one of the knights. But your world is not just soft fabrics and roaring fires. It's a world of discipline. Your primary guardian is your maternal uncle, Anthony Woodville Earl Rivers. He's a scholar, a poet, and one of the most chivalrous men in England. He oversees your education, which is comprehensive. You learn statcraft, law, and rhetoric. You study the classics. You are taught to ride, to hunt, and to fight. The goal isn't just to make you smart. It's to make you formidable, to mold you into a king in your father's image. Your father is a legend in his own lifetime. Edward IV is a giant of a man, famously handsome, a brilliant military commander who seized the throne through force of will and battlefield prowess. He is the sun in your universe. His visits to Ludlow are rare, momentous occasions that fill the castle with a nervous, electric energy. When he is there, the world feels secure, unshakable. He claps you on the shoulder, his hand nearly covering your entire back, and you feel the sheer force of his presence. He is England, and you are his son. This is the central, unshakable fact of your existence. Your mother's family, the Woodvilles, are ever present. They are ambitious, clever, and numerous. The old nobility, the established houses of Lancaster and York, looked down on them. They were minor gentry until your father fell head over heels in love with your mother, Elizabeth Woodville, and married her in secret. It was a scandal, a love match in an age where royal marriage was a tool of international diplomacy. The court never forgave her for it, or her family for their subsequent rise. You don't understand the depth of this resentment yet. To you, they are just your family. Uncle Anthony, your Chamberlain Thomas Vaughan, your half-brother Richard Grey. They are the men who guide your days. Life is a strange mix of immense privilege and profound pressure. You eat from silver plates, but your tutors drill you relentlessly. You are the Prince of Wales, but you are still a boy. You have moments where you and your younger brother, Richard, Duke of York, who sometimes stays with you, can escape your duties. You chase each other through the castle's bailey, your laughter echoing off the stone walls. You listen to minstrels in the great hall, their songs full of romance and daring deeds. But the weight of your future is always there, a heavy velvet cloak on your shoulders. You are not just a boy named Edward. You are the future of the House of York, the living symbol of your father's victory in the bloody Wars of the Roses. Everything in your life is geared towards one singular purpose: the day you will wear the crown. You have no reason to believe that day will come anytime soon. Your father is only 40 years old, a paragon of health and vitality. The future seems long, a distant horizon you are steadily sailing toward under a calm and sunny sky. You have no idea that a storm is gathering just over that horizon. A storm that will not just sink your ship, but shatter your entire world. And you are sailing directly into it. The news arrives in mid-April. It comes via a breathless messenger, his horse lathered in sweat, his face pale with exhaustion and the gravity of his message. The words he carries are simple, direct, and impossible to comprehend. The king is dead. Your father, the invincible Edward IV, has died suddenly in London after a short illness. In that moment, the structured, predictable world you have always known fractures. The air in the room seems to grow thin. The familiar faces of your tutors and household staff, Uncle Anthony among them, become masks of shock and uncertainty. Your father is gone, and you, a 12-year-old boy, are now King Edward V. The grief is a sharp physical blow, but there is no time for it. Everything becomes a flurry of urgent, hushed activity. Plans are made. Letters are written and dispatched by frantic riders. The council at Ludlow decides you must travel to London immediately for your coronation. The logic is sound. A king is not truly a king until the crown is on his head. An uncrowned king is vulnerable, a symbol without substance. The sooner you are anointed, the more secure the kingdom and the Yorkist dynasty will be. Your uncle, Anthony Woodville, assembles an escort of 2,000 men. It's a small army, a show of Woodville's strength intended to protect you and solidify their position as the power behind your throne. This right here is the first critical decision, the first domino to fall in a line you cannot yet see. To the Woodvilles, this armed escort is a sensible precaution. To their enemies at court, it looks like a power grab. They see your mother's family trying to seize control of the government, using you, the boy king, as their puppet. They don't trust your mother, the Queen Dowager Elizabeth. They certainly don't trust her ambitious brother. As you prepare to leave Ludlow, the place that has been your entire world, there's a sense of profound and terrifying transition. You are leaving boyhood behind. You are riding towards a crown. Your journey south is, at first, a stately procession. People line the roads to catch a glimpse of their new, young king. They cheer. It feels real. The weight of the crown you are yet to wear feels a little less burdensome with every mile. You are your father's son, and this is your birthright. But in London, a different kind of calculation is happening. Your other uncle, your father's youngest brother, Richard, Duke of Gloucester, is in the north of England when he hears of the king's death. Richard has always been your father's most loyal supporter. He is a renowned soldier, an able administrator, and a man known for his piety and seriousness. He has spent his life in his brother's shadow, serving him faithfully. Now your father's will has named him Lord Protector of the realm, tasked with governing England until you come of age. It is his duty to protect you, his nephew, and the kingdom. The two factions, your mother's family, the Woodvilles, with you in their possession, and your uncle Richard, backed by the old nobility who resent the Woodvilles, are on a collision course. They are two competing centers of power, and the prize is control over you. You are unaware of the frantic letters flying back and forth between Richard and his allies, like the powerful Duke of Buckingham. You only know that you are heading for London, and your Uncle Richard is riding south to meet you, to escort you to your destiny. The plan is for your two parties to rendezvous at Northampton. It will be a meeting of family, a unification of the forces that will guide your reign. Or so you think. You arrive at Stony Stratford, a small town just down the road from Northampton. While your Uncle Anthony rides ahead to meet Richard, the mood is optimistic. Soon, you will all be together, a united front. That night, you go to sleep a king, secure in the care of your family. You will wake up a prisoner. You just don't know it yet. The morning comes with a jolt. There is shouting outside your chambers, the tramp of heavy boots. Your attendants are being pushed aside, and then the door bursts open. Standing there are your two uncles, Richard, Duke of Gloucester, and his powerful ally, Henry Stafford, Duke of Buckingham. Their faces are grim, their eyes hard. There is no warmth, no familial greeting. Richard approaches your bed and bows, a formal, cold gesture. He addresses you as king, but then he declares that there has been a conspiracy. He announces that the men around you, your protectors, your family, your Uncle Anthony Woodville, and your half-brother Richard Grey have been plotting against him, the Lord Protector. He tells you they are traitors. He is arresting them. You are 12 years old. You are the King of England, and you are utterly powerless as you watch armed men seize your uncle, the man who has raised you. He is taken away, and you are told it is for your own safety. It is a masterclass in political theater. Richard isn't seizing the king. He is Asterisk rescuing Asterisk the king. He isn't staging a coup. He is Asterisk upholding Asterisk your father's will and protecting the realm from treacherous influences. It's a brilliant, terrifying inversion of reality. He pledges his undying loyalty to you, even as he systematically dismantles your entire support system. Your armed escort is dismissed. The 2,000 men are sent home. Now you are surrounded only by Richard's men. He is your sole protector. You continue your journey to London, but the atmosphere has changed. The cheering crowds are still there, but now there is a chill in the air. You ride beside your Uncle Richard, a small boy next to a formidable warrior. He is polite, deferential, but you are his captive. It's a gilded cage, but a cage nonetheless. News of the arrests travels faster than you do. It hits London like a thunderclap. Your mother, the Queen Dowager, understands immediately what this means. She knows the hatred the old nobility has for her family. She knows that without the king in her possession, she has no power. She does the only thing she can. She gathers your younger brother, Richard, Duke of York, and your sisters, and flees in the middle of the night. She seeks sanctuary at Westminster Abbey, a place legally beyond the reach of any secular power. It is a desperate, public declaration of fear. She is telling the world that she believes her children are in mortal danger. When you finally arrive in London in early May, you are greeted with all the ceremony befitting a king. The Lord Mayor hands you the keys to the city. Banners with your coat of arms fly from the buildings. You are paraded through the streets. But it is all hollow. You are not in control. Richard is. He is the one making the decisions, meeting with the council, running the country. And he makes another fateful decision. He declares that you will be lodged in the Tower of London. This is not, at first, as sinister as it sounds to modern ears. The Tower of London was not just a prison. It was a royal fortress, a palace, a secure residence. It was traditional for a new monarch to stay in the royal apartments at the Tower ahead of their coronation. It was a sign of prestige. You are installed in the Garden Tower, a comfortable suite of rooms. You are given servants, fine clothes, rich food. You can walk in the gardens. You are treated, on the surface, like a king. But the gates are locked. The guards at the door answer to your uncle. Your coronation is set for the 22nd of June. The preparations begin. Robes are ordered, ceremonies planned. For a few weeks, there is a tense sort of normality. You are the king, and Richard is the Lord Protector. This is the arrangement. But the ground is still shifting beneath your feet. Richard and his council begin a systematic purge of anyone loyal to your mother's family. Men are arrested. Lands are seized. Your mother remains locked away in sanctuary, refusing to give up your younger brother. She knows he is her last card to play. As long as she has the spare heir, she has some sliver of leverage. Richard needs your brother. Your presence in the tower alone is not enough. A king crowned without his only sibling present would look weak, illegitimate. It would signal to the world that the royal family was dangerously divided. Richard needs the image of unity. He needs both of you under his control. And so, he makes his next move. A move that will seal both of your fates and turn the key in the lock of your prison. He decides to break the ancient and sacred law of sanctuary. The pressure exerted on your mother is immense. On June 16th, a delegation led by the Archbishop of Canterbury goes to Westminster Abbey. They are there to persuade, but the threat of force hangs unspoken in the air. They argue that sanctuary does not apply to a young boy who is not old enough to have committed a crime and needs the companionship of his brother, the king. They give assurances. They make promises. They swear oaths on holy relics that your brother will be safe, that he will be returned to her. Your mother, trapped and with no good options left, finally relents. She knows it's a lie. In a heartbreaking public scene, she says goodbye to her 9-year-old son. She knows, in her bones, that she will never see him again. And so, your little brother Richard, Duke of York, comes to join you in the tower. His arrival changes everything. For you, it's a moment of joy, a reunion with the one person in the world who truly understands your situation. You are no longer alone. You play together in the gardens, 2 small boys in a vast stone fortress. You shoot arrows, you talk, you are brothers. For a short while, it almost feels like you have a family again. But for the men watching you, your brother's arrival is the final piece of the puzzle falling into place. Now, the Lord Protector has both of the sons of Edward IV, both of the claimants to the throne. They are together. They are secure. They are completely at his mercy. Almost immediately, the mood darkens. The coronation, once set for June 22nd, is postponed to a date in November. Then, with no date at all, the pretense is beginning to fall away. Whispers that were once confined to dark corners of the court are now being spoken more openly. Whispers about your legitimacy, about the validity of your father's marriage to your mother. The propaganda machine is warming up, preparing to launch its assault. The first public shot is fired by a friar named Ralph Shaw, who preaches a sermon at St. Paul's Cross, a major public pulpit in London. He delivers a bombshell. He claims that your father, Edward IV, had been previously contracted to marry another woman, a Lady Eleanor Butler, before he secretly married your mother. Under canon law, a pre-contract was as binding as a marriage. If it was true, it would mean your father's marriage to Elizabeth Woodville was bigamous and therefore invalid. And if the marriage was invalid, then all of its children, you and your brother, were illegitimate bastards, and bastards cannot inherit the throne. It is a stunning, audacious legal argument, the medieval equivalent of having a political rival disqualified on a technicality. Whether it was true or not was almost irrelevant. Lady Eleanor Butler was conveniently dead and couldn't confirm or deny the story. The only thing that mattered was that enough people believed it, or were willing to pretend they believed it. The story spreads like fire through the city. It provides the legal and moral justification for what is about to happen next. Your uncle, the pious, loyal Lord Protector, is no longer just protecting the realm for you. He is now being positioned as the only man who can save the realm from the illegitimate stain of your birth. The final act comes swiftly. A gathering of lords and commons, a carefully stage-managed assembly, presents a petition to Richard. The document, later known as the Titulus Regis formally lays out the case against your legitimacy. It praises Richard's own noble character, his proven leadership, his undisputed Yorkist blood. It begs him, for the good of the kingdom, to take the throne that is rightfully his. On June 26, 1483, Richard, Duke of Gloucester, accepts. He is declared King Richard III. The coup is complete. It was achieved not with a great battle, but with whispers, sermons, and a well-timed legal document. And what of you? You are no longer King Edward V. You are now merely Edward, the bastard son of the late king. Your titles, your inheritance, your entire identity erased. You and your brother are still in the tower, but it is no longer a royal residence. It is unequivocally a prison. Your world, which had already shrunk from a kingdom to a castle, now shrinks even further. First, your servants are dismissed, replaced by men loyal to the new king. Then, you and your brother are moved from the relatively comfortable garden tower to the older, more fortress-like White Tower, the heart of the ancient complex. The sightings of you become less and less frequent. An Italian diplomat, Dominic Mancini, who was in London at the time, wrote about what he heard from your physician. He said that you, like a victim prepared for sacrifice, began to seek forgiveness for your sins, as if you knew your death was imminent. He wrote that you and your brother were seen shooting arrows in the outer grounds. Then, a few weeks later, you were only glimpsed behind the barred windows of your new quarters. And then, nothing. Complete silence. You simply disappear from the record. 2 boys, the most important children in the kingdom, vanish from inside one of the most secure fortresses in the world. It's like a magic trick. A horrifying, impossible magic trick. The silence is what is so terrifying. There is no announcement of your death, no public funeral, no official story. You just cease to be. Outside the walls of the tower, rumors begin to swirl like autumn leaves in the wind. Some say you've been sent away, spirited across the sea to live in secret. Others, more grimly, whisper that you have been murdered. The most common story, the one that takes root and grows, is that you were smothered in your sleep by assassins acting on the orders of the new king, your uncle. From your perspective, inside those stone walls, what does this descent feel like? The days must have bled into one another, a monotonous cycle of confinement. The sounds of the bustling city of London, once a promise of your future, are now just a muffled roar beyond the walls, a reminder of a world you can no longer access. Do you spend your days in fear, in confusion? Or, as children so often do you adapt? Do you create games to play within your limited world, finding moments of normalcy and even joy with your brother in the face of an incomprehensible situation? The historical record gives us no insight into your emotional state. It only tells us that you were seen, and then you were not. The world outside moves on. Your uncle, King Richard III, is crowned in a lavish ceremony. He tours the kingdom, trying to solidify his rule. But the shadow of your disappearance hangs over him. The very silence that was meant to erase you from the picture instead creates a vacuum that rumors rush in to fill. The question of your fate becomes a powerful weapon for his enemies. Less than 3 months into his reign, a major rebellion breaks out, led by his former ally, the Duke of Buckingham. The stated goal of the rebellion? To rescue you and your brother from the Tower. It's a convenient rallying cry, though it's unclear if Buckingham even knew if he were still alive. The rebellion fails, and Buckingham's executed. But it shows how volatile your existence, or non-existence, has made the kingdom. The years pass. Your uncle Richard rules for 2 years, a reign plagued by instability and the constant nagging question of your fate. Then, in 1485, a new challenger arrives. A Welsh exile with a thin but legitimate claim to the throne through a Lancastrian line, Henry Tudor. He lands in Wales with a small army. He rallies support by painting Richard as a monstrous tyrant and a child killer. The disappearance of the princes is his greatest piece of propaganda. At the Battle of Bosworth Field, Richard III is defeated and killed. Henry Tudor is crowned King Henry VII, founding a new dynasty. The first thing Henry does is marry your eldest sister, Elizabeth of York. This is a brilliant political move, uniting the warring houses of York and Lancaster. But it also presents a problem. If you or your brother were to suddenly reappear, your claim to the throne would be superior to both his and his wife's. You are a threat to the Tudors, just as you were to Richard. Conveniently for Henry, you remain gone. The official Tudor story, cemented by historians like Polydore Virgil and Thomas More, and later immortalized by Shakespeare, becomes the one we know today. Richard III, the wicked uncle, murdered you to seize the throne. It was a story that served the Tudors perfectly. It legitimized their rule by demonizing the man they had overthrown. But did he do it? The case against Richard is strong, but purely circumstantial. He had the motive securing his throne. He had the means, he controlled the Tower. He had the opportunity, but there is no smoking gun. No deathbed confession, no eyewitness account that isn't tainted by Tudor propaganda written decades later. And there are other suspects. What about Henry Tudor himself? Some argue he could have had you quietly murdered after he took the throne in 1485 to eliminate any rival claimants, pinning the blame on the already dead Richard. It's plausible. What about the Duke of Buckingham? He was a powerful man with royal blood and his own ambitions. Could he have murdered you during his rebellion in 1483, hoping to seize the throne for himself and blame Richard? Also plausible. The mystery endures precisely because there is no definitive proof. There is only the silence, the propaganda, and a story told by the victors. And then, centuries later, there are the bones. Let's return to that day in 1674. Imagine being one of those workmen. You're taking down a stone staircase, a dusty, back-breaking job in the guts of the old White Tower. Your crowbar hits something that isn't stone. It's wood. You clear away the rubble and find the top of a small chest. With effort, you and your fellow workers pry it open. The smell of ancient, disturbed earth fills the air, and inside you see them, the small, fragile skeletons of 2 children lying together. The work stops. A hush falls over the site. Everyone knows the stories of the tower. Everyone knows the legend of the lost princes. You are staring at what you believe to be the final, tragic chapter of their story. The discovery causes a sensation. The reigning king, Charles II, a monarch keenly aware of the symbolism of royal lineage and succession, orders the remains to be examined. The surgeons of the day conclude that the skeletons belong to 2 boys, one around 12 or 13, the other around 9 or 10. Your ages. They find traces of what they believe to be decayed velvet, suggesting the bodies were buried in fine clothing. This fits. King Charles II, convinced these are the remains of his long-lost royal predecessors, has them placed in a marble urn and solemnly interred at Westminster Abbey, the final resting place of kings and queens. The inscription declares them to be the remains of Edward V and his brother Richard, Duke of York. The case, it seems, is closed. But for modern science, it was just the beginning. The bones were re-examined twice in the 20th century. In 1933, an examination confirmed the earlier age estimates and noted some dental, crowding, and bone features consistent with a familial relationship. However, the examination was, by modern standards, flawed. They couldn't determine the sex of the skeletons with certainty, nor could they establish a cause of death. They also, bizarrely, rebared the bones mixed with some animal remains that had been stored with them, complicating any future study. Today, there is a fierce debate over whether these bones should be subjected to modern forensic analysis, including DNA testing. A DNA test could potentially confirm if the remains are related to the royal line, and perhaps even confirm their sex. But the Church of England and the royal household have so far refused permission, arguing that the remains are in a sacred burial place and should not be disturbed. And so, the bones under the marble urn in Westminster Abbey remain as much a mystery as the story that surrounds them. They are a powerful piece of circumstantial evidence, a tangible link to your disappearance, but they are not the final, definitive answer. They are the climax to a story that has no conclusion. So we are left where we began, in the realm of speculation. Your life, which began with such certainty, with a path laid out for you from the cradle to the throne, ended in the greatest of uncertainties. You became a ghost in your own story, a blank space onto which others could project their ambitions, their fears, and their political narratives. To your Uncle Richard's supporters, you were the symbol of a corrupt line that had to be swept aside. To the Tudors, you were the innocent victims whose deaths justified their own seizure of power. But stripping all of that away, who were you? You were a boy, thrust into a world of terrifyingly high stakes. You were learning to be a king when the rules of the game were changed without your consent. You watched as your family was torn apart, your protectors arrested, your own identity legally dismantled. Your final days were spent with your younger brother, 2 children alone against the machinations of powerful men. Your story is a profound and tragic lesson in the nature of power. It shows how quickly fortunes can turn, how titles and birthright are no protection when someone else is more ruthless, more determined, and holds all the keys. The true horror of your story isn't a Shakespearean monster. It's the cold, calculated logic of political necessity. You and your brother were a problem. And in the 15th century, problems like you were often solved with a quiet, final efficiency. The walls of the tower did not just hold you prisoner. They swallowed you whole, leaving behind nothing but a haunting silence and a mystery that continues to fascinate us 500 years later. As our journey through the mystery of the princes in the tower concludes tonight, we're reminded that the past is far from dusty and dull. It's a vibrant, often surprising, and always intriguing tapestry, woven with human ingenuity, resilience, and the occasional ancient mystery that still makes us wonder. This is the Sleeping Archaeologist, encouraging you to remain curious about the incredible tales still waiting to be discovered beneath our feet. Our next story is the tombstone that solved the 600-year-old mystery of the Black Death. Hope you like it. Let's talk about the Black Death. For most of us, it exists in our minds as a kind of historical horror movie. It's the vague, spooky backdrop from Monty Python sketches. A terrifying, faceless villain that just appeared. One day, Europe is muddling along in its usual medieval way, and the next, a third of the population is gone. The history books have always been a bit hazy on the specifics of its origin, haven't they? They tend to talk about it in grand, sweeping terms, like a malevolent weather system. It came from the East, they say, waving a hand vaguely towards Asia, a continent so vast it makes the statement functionally useless. It's like saying a package you're expecting is somewhere in North America. Thanks for narrowing it down. This idea of the plague as some unknowable, spontaneous cataclysm has always been deeply unsatisfying. It's a historical shrug. It treats the single greatest demographic disaster in human history like it was just bad luck, an act of God with no return address. We've mapped the genome of woolly mammoths. We've found the fingerprints of cosmic impacts in ancient rock. But for 6 centuries, the precise starting pistol for the Black Death remained a mystery. It was a cold case colder than a well-digger's ankles in January. Historians and scientists argued, pointed fingers at different regions, and generally agreed to disagree, leaving the origin story of this world-altering pandemic filed under probably China. Maybe, we guess. But that entire story is wrong. Tonight you are a merchant. The year is 1338, and you live in a bustling trade settlement on the shores of Lake Issyk-Kul in what is now modern-day Kyrgyzstan. You are a Nestorian Christian, a follower of a branch of the faith that has flourished here for centuries along the arteries of the Silk Road. You speak a Turkic language. You write in Syriac script, and you trade with people from every corner of the known world. You are a vital, living node in the network that connects empires. And you, your family, and your neighbors are about to become the first recorded victims of the bacterium that will bring Europe to its knees a decade later. You are the prologue to the Black Death, the proof of your existence. The receipts of your tragic story sat waiting for nearly 600 years. They aren't grand monuments or royal decrees. They are simple rectangular tombstones, carved from local stone. Archaeologists found them in the 1880s, hundreds of them, from 2 small cemeteries of a long-vanished community. The inscriptions are short, carved in a beautiful angular script. They give a name, a date, and for a handful of them, a cause of death. The word they used was pestilence. And inside the teeth of the people buried beneath those stones, scientists in the 21st century would find the ghost, the genetic fingerprint of the killer itself, an ancient strain of asterisk Yersinia pestis asterisk, the ancestor of all the Black Death plagues that followed. It's the murder weapon, the motive, and the victim's testimony, all rolled into one. This discovery, made in the late 1880s, but only truly understood in the 2020s, in modern-day Kyrgyzstan, reveals something extraordinary about the origins of history's most devastating pandemic. As we settle in tonight, we're going to uncover not just what archaeologists found, but what it tells us about the surprisingly relatable lives of people who lived on the Silk Road in the 14th century. Now dim the lights and prepare to discover why this story will change how you think about the Black Death. Your day begins not with an alarm, but with the braying of a donkey that has, for reasons known only to itself, decided that 4 in the morning is the ideal time to practice for its big audition. You groan, roll over on your felt mat, and pull a wool blanket tighter around your shoulders. The air in your small, mud brick home is cool and smells faintly of wood smoke from last night's fire and the lingering aroma of mutton fat. It's the smell of home. Outside, the world is still draped in the deep, pre-dawn blue of the Central Asian sky, but the business of life is already stirring. This is home, this settlement nestled in the Chi Valley, a place of stunning, almost aggressive beauty. To the south, the Tian Shan Mountains, the Celestial Mountains, claw at the sky, their peaks permanently capped in brilliant white snow even in the height of summer. Their meltwater feeds the valley, making it a ribbon of impossible green in a landscape of high-altitude desert and steppe. And just a day's ride away is the Great Lake, Issyk-Kul, the warm lake that never freezes. A vast expanse of sapphire water so large it feels like an inland sea. You are not a farmer, though you appreciate the barley and melons the local villagers grow. You are a man of the road, a man of commerce. Your life is a series of calculations, of weighing silver against silk, of judging the honesty in a man's eyes, of knowing the difference between Chinese porcelain that will fetch a fortune in Sarai and a clever imitation that will leave you ruined. Your community here is an oasis of trade, a rest stop on the world's most important highway. You are Nestorian Christians, a faith that has traveled the Silk Road just as silk and spices have. Your church, a simple stone building, is a testament to that journey. Your priest reads the liturgy in Syriac, a language that echoes the deserts of the Middle East, yet you live and trade among Turkic tribes, Mongol overlords, and merchants who pray to Allah, Buddha, or a host of other gods. And for the most part, it works. Commerce, you've found, is a wonderfully effective peacemaker. It's hard to get into a theological argument with someone when you're both trying to figure out if he's trying to pass off dyed goat hair as premium cashmere. You rise and dress in the dim light, trousers of coarse wool, a long tunic, and stout leather boots. You splash your face with cold water from a clay basin. The water is crisp and carries the metallic taste of the mountains. Breakfast is simple, a piece of yesterday's flatbread, hard and satisfying to chew, and a cup of salty tea mixed with milk and butter. It's an acquired taste, but it coats the stomach and provides the energy you need for a long day of what is essentially professional haggling. Your wife is already up, tending to the small fire in the center of the room, her movements practiced and efficient. Your children are still asleep, tangled in their blankets, blissfully unaware of the price of nutmeg into breeze. You look at them and feel the familiar, potent cocktail of overwhelming love and low-grade anxiety that is the core of being a parent in any century. The odds of them reaching adulthood are, statistically dicey. Every fever, every cough, every fall is a roll of the dice. But that is the way of the world. You don't dwell on it. You can't. Stepping outside, the air is thin and clean. The sun is just beginning to ignite the tops of the mountains in shades of rose and gold. The settlement is a jumble of single-story buildings, a mix of mud brick houses and the circular yurts of more nomadic families. The streets, such as they are unpaved, and a fine layer of dust covers everything. A permanent souvenir from the caravans that are the lifeblood of this place. The smell of cooking fires now mingles with the smell of animals, camels, horses, donkeys, goats, and the faint, sweet scent of their dung, which is dried and used as fuel. It's not an unpleasant smell. It is the smell of wealth, of movement, of life. You head towards the caravanserai, the large, fortified inn at the edge of the settlement where the long-distance traders rest. This is your office. This is where the world comes to you. The caravanserai is already a hive of activity. Bactrian camels, those magnificent, shaggy beasts with two humps, groan and complain as they are loaded with bales of goods wrapped in canvas and leather. They are the long-haul trucks of the 14th century, capable of carrying immense weight and possessing an attitude that suggests they are profoundly unimpressed with the entire endeavor. Their handlers, men with skin like cracked leather and eyes that have seen 1,000 horizons, shout at them in 12 languages. You navigate the controlled chaos, nodding to men you know. There's a Sogdian from Samarkand with a shipment of raw silk, a Persian who deals in lapis lazuli from the mines of Badakhshan, a Uyghur with a cargo of rhubarb, which is bafflingly popular as a medicine in the West. You are all cogs in a machine of immense scale, a continent-spanning network of trust and credit. You might not like a particular merchant. You might not trust him farther than you can throw a camel, but you are both part of the same system. The Pax Mongolica, the Mongol peace, has made this possible. The great Khans, for all their brutality, have made the roads safer than they have been in generations. They have established a system of passports and relay stations. It is a golden age for trade, and you are living right in the middle of it. Your specialty is furs. You trade locally sourced goods, wool, felt, leather for the precious pelts that come down from the northern forests, from the lands of the Rus and beyond. Sable, marten, ermine, fox. The nobility of Europe and the Middle East can't get enough of them. To them, it is the ultimate status symbol. a way to display wealth by literally wearing it. To you, it is a business of texture and smell. You can tell the quality of a sable pelt by the way it feels against your cheek, by its weight, by the depth and richness of its color. You spend your morning inspecting a new shipment that has just arrived. The furs are bundled and smell of the forest, of pine and cold earth, and a faint, musky animal scent. You run your hands over them, searching for imperfections, your mind a running calculator of risk and reward. These pelts represent a significant investment. You've purchased them on credit, a promise that you will pay the supplier once you sell them to a westbound merchant. Your entire reputation, your family's well-being, rests on these soft, dark furs. And you have a buyer in mind, a Genoese agent who is due to arrive with the next caravan from the east. He pays well, but he drives a hard bargain. The dance of commerce is about to begin. But you have other things on your mind today, small worries that buzz at the edge of your thoughts like flies. For one, the local marmot population has been behaving strangely. These are the large sociable ground squirrels that live in colonies all over the steppe. They are a common sight, fat and furry, whistling warnings to each other as you ride past. Hunters trap them for their meat and their fur, a cheap alternative to the luxury pelts you deal in. But lately, the hunters have been saying the colonies are quiet. They've found dozens of the animals dead in their burrows, with no obvious signs of injury. It's strange. A local shaman claims it's a bad omen, that the spirits of the earth are angry. You are a Christian. You don't believe in such things, but you also believe in listening to the world around you. And the world seems a little off-kilter. You dismiss it as a cyclical blight, something that happens from time to time in the animal world. It's probably nothing. It's just the marmots. The afternoon is spent in negotiation. You and the Persian merchant, whose name is Farhad, sit on a carpet in the shade of the caravanserai wall, a plate of dried apricots and nuts between you. The conversation is a slow, circular dance. You talk about the weather, the health of the great Khan, the rumored banditry on the road to Kashgar. You praise the quality of his carpets. He compliments the luster of your furs, though you haven't even shown them to him yet. This is the preamble, the delicate ritual that must be observed. Rushing a deal is a sign of desperation. An hour passes before you even begin to discuss prices. The numbers are spoken softly, almost as asides. He makes an offer that is, frankly, insulting. You counter with a price that is optimistically absurd. He sighs. You shrug. You both eat another apricot. This could take days. It is a battle of wills, of patience. But this is the life you have chosen, the rhythm of your existence. Every transaction is a story, every deal a small victory or a lesson learned. You feel alive in these moments, the whole world condensed into this small space, a conversation over a few pieces of dried fruit that connects a hunter in Siberia to a duchess in Venice. As the sun begins its slow descent, casting long shadows across the valley, a new caravan is spotted on the horizon, a slow-moving cloud of dust that resolves itself into a line of camels and men. This will be the caravan from the east, the one carrying the Genoese agent, and hopefully your profits. There is a sense of anticipation in the settlement. A new caravan means new goods, new faces, new information. It is news, entertainment, and economic opportunity all rolled into one. Children run to the edge of the settlement to get the first look. Merchants, including you, gather near the gates of the caravanserai, feigning casual indifference while your minds race with possibilities. What are they carrying? Silk? Spices? Porcelain? A new strain of influenza that will lay you low for a week? That last one is a constant risk of the job. Every caravan brings the potential for disease. A cough from Cathay can become a fever in your home in a matter of weeks. It's a cost of doing business, a risk you all accept. But there have been whispers lately, rumors carried with the dust and the goods. Stories of a strange and virulent sickness in the lands farther east. The rumors are vague, contradictory. Some say it strikes with a high fever and a black rash. Others say it causes strange swellings on the body. It is easy to dismiss these stories. The Silk Road has always been a highway for rumors as much as goods. Exaggeration is a form of currency. Still, as you watch the caravan approach, you feel a prickle of unease you can't quite name. The caravan seems smaller than you expected. The men walking alongside the camels seem weary, more so than the usual exhaustion of the road. There is a hollowness to their eyes. You tell yourself it is just your imagination, the late afternoon light playing tricks on you. The sight of a new business opportunity should be filling you with excitement, not this quiet, nameless dread, but something is different. The air itself feels heavy, expectant. You look up at the celestial mountains, their snowy peaks now glowing with the last rays of the sun. They are eternal, unchanging. They have watched empires rise and fall in this valley. They have seen plagues come and go. You take a deep breath, the thin mountain air a balm. It's just another caravan. It's just another deal. Tomorrow will be a new day, just like any other, and you have furs to sell. You turn back to the business of the living, unaware that you are watching the arrival of a ghost, a microscopic passenger that has traveled thousands of miles, hidden in the blood of a flea, riding on the back of a rat, nestled in a bale of silk. A passenger that is about to disembark. You couldn't have known, of course. How could you? You are simply a man trying to make a living, standing at the crossroads of the world, just as the world itself is about to change forever. A week passes. The Genoese agent, a man named Niccolo, with a sour disposition and an even sourer stomach from the local food, has purchased half of your furs. The deal took 3 days of intense, draining negotiation that involved more theatrical sighing and feigned indignation than a royal wedding. But the price was good. You now have a small leather pouch heavy with silver coins, the tangible result of your expertise and patience. Some of this will go to pay your supplier, some will be reinvested, and some will go to your family. Perhaps a new dress for your wife, a small wooden toy for your son. These are the moments of quiet satisfaction that make the risks and the stress worthwhile. Life is good, the rhythm is stable, and yet the feeling of unease persists. It's a low hum beneath the surface of daily life. The first to fall ill is a camel handler from the eastern caravan. You hear he has a raging fever and has taken to his bed in the caravanserai. This is not unusual. The road is hard, and fevers are common. But then 2 more men from the same caravan fall sick, and then a local woman who sold them bread. The pattern is subtle at first, just a slight increase in the background noise of everyday sickness. But then the rumors begin to take a more definite shape. They talk about a swelling, a painful lump the size of an apple, appearing in the groin or the armpit of the sick. They call it a bubo. You've never heard of such a thing. The sick become delirious with fever, their skin taking on a strange dusky hue, and they die. They die quickly, within a few days of the first symptoms. This is not a normal fever. This is something new, something aggressive, something terrifyingly efficient. Fear begins to seep into the community like winter cold. It's a quiet fear, spoken of in whispers. People start to avoid the caravanserai. They eye strangers with suspicion. The camaraderie of the trade route begins to fray. An old neighbor, a man you have known since you were a boy, develops a cough. The next day, he has a fever. 2 days later, his wife is wailing outside their home, a sound of pure animal grief that chills you to the bone. He is dead. The pestilence, as people are now calling it, has jumped from the caravan into your community. It is no longer a traveler's tale from a distant land. It is here. It is in your street. It might be in your home. Every cough, every sneeze now sounds like a death knell. You check your own children for fever a dozen times a day, your hand on their foreheads, feeling for a warmth that is anything other than normal. You watch your wife, looking for any sign of fatigue, any hint of sickness. The familiar spaces of your life, the market, the church, the well, are suddenly filled with an invisible menace. The natural response is to flee, to pack up your family and your belongings and head for the mountains, for the clean air, away from the sickness. But where would you go? The pestilence seems to be everywhere now, and you are a merchant, a man of property. Your wealth is tied up in goods, in your home, in your reputation here. To leave is to abandon everything you have built. Besides, the roads are no longer safe. The Mongol authorities, in a rare display of public health policy, have begun to restrict travel. They are trying to contain the outbreak, but it's like trying to contain the wind. The trade that was your lifeblood has become the vector of your death. The irony is so bitter it could curdle milk. The very interconnectedness that brought you prosperity is now the instrument of your potential destruction. So you stay. You pray. You hope the pestilence will pass you by. You try to live your life as normally as possible, in a world that is rapidly becoming anything but normal. A market grows quiet. The vibrant chaos is replaced by a tense, sparse collection of people hurrying to get what they need and leave. The sound of haggling is gone, replaced by the sound of coughing and the distant tolling of your church bell, which now seems to ring almost constantly, marking the passing of another soul. You see fewer and fewer familiar faces. The Persian merchant Farhad, the man you spent days negotiating with, is gone. You hear he died in his room at the caravanserai, alone. The community is shrinking. Every day, another family is touched by the sickness. The social fabric, woven over generations, is unraveling thread by thread. Funerals become simple, hurried affairs. There is no time for proper mourning. The bodies are wrapped in shrouds and taken to the community cemetery, a quiet plot of land just outside the settlement. Your family has a plot there. Your grandparents are buried there. The thought of it now fills you with a cold, hollow dread. One evening, you come home from a tense and largely fruitless day of trying to conduct business. The house is quiet. Too quiet. Your wife is sitting by the fire, but she isn't spinning wool or preparing a meal. She is just staring into the flames. Your youngest son is lying on his mat, covered in blankets, and he is shivering despite the warmth of the room. You rush to his side. You place your hand on his forehead. It is burning. A wave of ice and fire washes over you. It is a feeling of absolute, paralyzing terror. You know, with a certainty that steals the air from your lungs, that the pestilence has entered your home. It has breached your walls, and there is nothing you can do. There are no doctors who know how to treat this. The local healers offer poultices and prayers, but they are useless. You have seen it a dozen times now. The fever, the delirium, the telltale swelling. And then the end. The next few days are a blur of fear and helplessness. You do what you can. You spoon water between your son's cracked lips. You bathe his head with cool cloths. You sit by his side, holding his small hand, listening to his ragged breathing, and you pray with an intensity you have never known before. You pray to God, to Jesus, to Mary, to any saint who might be listening. You beg, you bargain. You offer your wealth, your business, your own life, in exchange for his. But his fever only climbs. He begins to talk in his delirium about playing by the river, about a lost toy, and then you find it. While adjusting his blankets, your fingers brush against a tender, swollen lump in his groin. It is hard and hot to the touch, the bubo, the sign. And with that discovery, the last ember of hope dies. You are no longer a father trying to save his son. You are a witness waiting for the inevitable. Your wife is hollow-eyed, moving like a ghost. You don't speak of it, but you both know. You are just counting the hours. He dies on the fourth day, in the gray light of dawn. The silence he leaves behind is a physical thing, a crushing weight that fills every corner of your home. It is the end of a world. But it is not the end of the pestilence. 2 days after you bury your son, your wife complains of a headache. By evening, she has a fever. The nightmare begins again, but this time it is faster, more brutal. You barely have time to process the grief for your son before you are consumed by the terror of losing your wife. You go through the motions, the water, the cool cloths, but your heart is a dead, heavy thing in your chest. You are numb. You know how this story ends. She dies, her hand in yours, her last breath a faint sigh. You are now alone with your remaining children, in a house that is no longer a home but a tomb. And then you begin to feel it, a deep, aching weariness in your bones, a chill that has nothing to do with the temperature of the room, a headache that throbs behind your eyes. You know what it is. You are not afraid. You are not even sad. You are just tired, so very, very tired. Your turn has come. The pestilence has finally claimed you too. Your last coherent thoughts are not of business or money. They are of your wife's smile, the sound of your son's laughter. You think of the taste of fresh-baked bread and the sight of the sun on the snowy peaks of the Tian Shan. Small, simple things, the true currency of life. Your brother, his face a mask of grief and fear, arranges for your burial. There is no time for elaborate ceremony. Your body, along with those of your wife and son, are wrapped in simple linen shrouds. You are carried to the small cemetery on the hill, the one that overlooks the valley, the one that is now filling up with shocking speed. A stonemason, a man who has more work than he can handle, is commissioned to carve your tombstone. He works quickly. He carves your name. He carves the year, 1339. And then, at your brother's instruction, he carves the cause of death. He chisels the letters from the Syriac alphabet onto the stone, a final terse testament to your life and the lives of so many of your neighbors. He carves the word pestilence, and there you lie, for centuries. Your community vanishes. The Silk Road shifts its roots. New empires rise, old ones fall. Your settlement is abandoned, the mud brick walls crumbling back into the earth until nothing is left but a few gentle mounds on the landscape. But your grave remains. Your tombstone stands as a silent sentinel, the inscription slowly softened by wind and snow. You, the merchant from the shores of Lake Issyk-Kul, are forgotten. Your story is lost. The world moves on, remembering the Black Death as a European catastrophe, its origins a murky, unsolvable riddle. You are just a skeleton under a few feet of Kyrgyzstani soil. But you are not just a skeleton. You are a time capsule. You are the key, because locked within the hard, protective enamel of your teeth, a final microscopic witness to your death has survived. The ancient DNA of the bacterium that killed you, Yersinia pestis*, is preserved, waiting for the arrival of a different kind of traveler, a new kind of explorer, not a merchant, but an archaeologist. 550 years after your death, in the 1880s, a Russian scholar named Daniel Chulsin is exploring the region. He hears about 2 old cemeteries, called Kara-Jigak and Barana, filled with tombstones bearing strange inscriptions. He recognizes the script as Syriac. He is an academic, not an archaeologist, but he understands the importance of the find. He arranges for the stones to be collected and studied. He translates the inscriptions. He notes the unusually high number of burials in the years 1338 and 1339. He reads the word pestilence on 10 of the tombstones, including yours. He publishes his findings. He even speculates that this could be connected to the Black Death that ravaged Asia and Europe a few years later. And then, nothing. The world largely ignores his discovery. It's a historical curiosity, a footnote. The stones end up in the Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg. The skeletons from the graves you and your family were exhumed from are packed away and stored. The trail goes cold. The mystery remains unsolved. The world, it seems, wasn't ready to listen to what you had to say. Another 130 years pass. It is now the 21st century. The world is connected in ways you could never have imagined. Information travels not on the back of a camel, but at the speed of light. And science has developed a new kind of archaeology, one that can read the stories written not in stone, but in the very building blocks of life itself. A team of researchers, historians, and geneticists stumble across Chwolson's old work. They are intrigued by the 1338 to 1339 death spike, and by that one crucial word, pestilence. It is a long shot, but they wonder if any of the remains from those graves still exist. They track them down. They get permission to study the skeletons excavated all those years ago. Specifically, they focus on the teeth. The dental pulp, sealed inside the tooth, is one of the best places in the human body to find preserved DNA from ancient infections. It's a perfect little vault, protecting the evidence of the killer that resided in the bloodstream. They drill into the teeth of 7 individuals who were buried in that cemetery, including you. They extract the fragmented, degraded DNA. They use powerful computers to piece it all together, sorting through the genetic code of you, the human, and the countless microbes that lived in your body. It is like searching for a single specific sentence in a library where all the books have been shredded into confetti. But they find it. In the remains of 3 of the individuals, they find the unmistakable genetic signature of asterisk Yersinia pestis asterisk. They have found the murder weapon, but the discovery is even more profound than that. They don't just find the plague bacterium. They are able to reconstruct its entire genome. And when they compare it to other known strains of the plague, both ancient and modern, they realize what they have. The strain that killed you, the one circulating in your community in 1338, is the direct ancestor of all the Black Death strains. It sits at the very base of the plague's family tree. This isn't just asterisk, a asterisk plague outbreak. It is asterisk the asterisk outbreak. It is the Big Bang of the Black Death, the starting point, the source. After 600 years of searching, the mystery is solved. And you, the forgotten merchant, were the one holding the answer all along. As science confirms what the tombstones hinted at, your community was not just a victim of the plague. It was the site of the spillover event, the moment the bacterium jumped into the human population and began its devastating march across the world. The scientists even looked at the modern strains of asterisk Yersinia pestis asterisk still found in the local animal population. And they found a match. The closest living relatives to the strain that killed you are still circulating today, right there in the Tian Shan Mountains, in the local marmot population. The very animals whose strange deaths you and your neighbors had noted with mild concern. It was the marmots all along. A hunter, a trapper, someone in your community, handled an infected animal. Perhaps they were bitten by one of its fleas. That was all it took. One flea bite, one microscopic invasion, and the world was set on a new course. Your personal tragedy, the loss of your family and your life, was the first tremor of a seismic event. The pestilence that wiped out your community did not stop at the edge of the valley. It traveled in the caravans, moving west along the same trade routes that had brought you your livelihood. It reached the Caspian Sea, then the Black Sea port of Kaffa. In 1347, it arrived in Sicily on a Genoese trading ship, perhaps a ship owned by the very same company that employed Niccolo, the agent you sold your furs to. From there, it exploded across Europe. It would kill up to 60% of the population, toppling feudal systems, transforming economies, and reshaping the course of Western civilization. And it all started there with you. Not in some vague, unknowable East, but in a specific place, at a specific time, among specific people. Your story, unearthed from your bones and your tombstone, has finally given the Black Death an address. It has given it a human face. Your face. So as we think about history, it's easy to get lost in the grand narratives, the stories of kings and empires and vast, impersonal forces. But discoveries like this remind us that history is always personal. It is the sum of individual lives, of individual tragedies and triumphs. You are not a king or a conqueror. You are a husband, a father, a businessman. You worried about your children's health and the price of furs. You lived a full, complex life in a world that was just as interconnected and just as fragile as our own. You were an ordinary person who found yourself at the epicenter of an extraordinary event, the first domino in a chain that would stretch across continents and centuries. Your simple stone grave marker, with its terse, heartbreaking inscription, did more than mark your final resting place. It held the solution to one of history's greatest mysteries, a message in a bottle that took over 600 years to finally be read. Your story wasn't lost after all. It was just waiting for us to learn how to listen to the silent testimony of the dead. As our journey through the story of the Karadzic necropolis concludes tonight, we're reminded that the past is far from dusty and dull. It's a vibrant, often surprising, and always intriguing tapestry, woven with human ingenuity, resilience, and the occasional ancient mystery that still makes us wonder. This is The Sleeping Archaeologist, encouraging you to remain curious about the incredible tales still waiting to be discovered beneath our feet.